Welcome back, Hoops HD under the radar.
Yes. What?
Under the radar. That's our show.
No, no, no,
tonight,
no, no,
isn't it?
no, 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 no. This is the Kyle Lamb show.
Oh, it's the Kyle Lamb show. I didn't think it was
Yeah,
a Kyle Lamb show. We don't have video on Kyle
it's
Lamb shows, do we?
what is this under the radar?
Yeah, this is under the radar. Wait,
Well,
wait.
I'm out. Well, forget it. I'm out of here.
And I
Is
am
Kyle
not your host, Kyle Lamb.
Okay.
There you did it.
All right, John, welcome to the Hoops Under the Radar. You and I tonight, we got a lot to go over this evening, thankfully without the puppet. And why don't we start for everybody by defining what it means to be under the radar? And wait, it's back.
Oh, yeah. First, a couple things we have to bring up. Number one, under the radar are all of the 22 conferences outside of the Power 5 plus the Big East, the Atlantic 10, the American, the Mountain West, and the West Coast Conference. And the second rule is you can't be a member of the top 25. We don't have too many such teams waiting in the wings, but that remains to be seen in the next few weeks.
Yeah, none of them so far. And unfortunately, I think it is back. Welcome back, David.
Oh well, thank you.
This is still under
It's
the radar,
great to
though.
be back.
It's still under the radar.
Okay, let's do under the radar.
Okay. We like what to do is have a feature conference every show here that we just spend a few extra minutes speaking about, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up on the screen share here in about 3 seconds our board, and there it is. Our feature conference tonight is the Colonial Athletic Association.
All right.
And I wanted to make this our feature conference actually because of the incredible start that Towson has been out to here. 10-1 overall with some very impressive wins. Got the win over UMBC, who we thought would be a competitive team in the America East this week. That was their only game this past week, though.
This league a little bit upside down. You and I, or at least I was really big on this conference coming into the year. I thought that we would see a team land inside the bubble. We still could. I mean, Towson only has the one loss, and if they continue to win at this rate, then they should at least be in the discussion. But I don't think these are the teams we expected to see. I thought the ones we kind of were eyeballing were College of Charleston. We liked Towson. I don't think I liked them as much as you guys. And Elon kind of been or Elon, how do you say it?
It's
I know.
Elon. Elon's been very disappointing. Actually, what I'm going to do is go over here to our team sheet pages that we're going to be using more and more. And
I love these team sheets.
Towson,
These are great. Look at
on the left.
yeah.
I know that with our faces on the screen, we're cutting off a little bit of the upcoming schedule there for Charleston. But Towson over there, you can see only the loss at Old Dominion, including win over Georgia Southern team that we're going to be discussing a little bit when we get to the Sun Belt. A nice win over LaSalle. Only one true road win, but 4 neutral court wins, David.
Yeah, real good start here for Towson. And again, if they keep winning at this clip, and I know we've mentioned it before, but in fact, I think I've mentioned it way too much. I'll let some of you guys mention it. Just the remarkable job, not just this year, but everything that's built into this year that Pat Scarry has done since taking over an absolute mess of a program.
But if you go back to November, the main difference between Towson and Charleston is Tigers actually won their tournament, which featured a game against Georgia Southern in the championship of the Gulf Coast Showcase. Charleston, if you remember, laid a stinker in their opener at the Great Alaska Shootout.
Yeah, they did. They really did. And
Well,
that hurt them.
It also hurt them because it put them in the other side of the bracket. They ended up not getting a D1 opponent. They ended up getting Alaska Anchorage in that event also. So and you see here, if you look at RPI right now, they do not have a top 190 win against the current RPI.
Yeah, I know.
It's not good.
Right.
Not
and what you're seeing on the screen here is something that I am really excited about. I hate to do this, but I hate to say this, but Chad really did a fantastic job putting these together. These are pretty much exact replicas. And by that, I mean, if you were to look at this and you're – content-wise, of what the actual selection committee looks at. I mean, the remaining schedule, that column isn't there because by the time they get it, there really isn't much left. But, Chad, these are fantastic. This is a great resource. Yeah.
Yeah, you could see a lot of numbers up top here in the yellowish section, including the various metrics, the KPI, strength of resume, JNG, and all these numbers here. All of these metrics are now going to be on the team sheets, including these averages of the metrics. Other than our Joby Fortson's JNG reading, that is not officially on the official NCAA team sheet, but it's on our team sheets this year.
Well, it is on the site, and along with our survival page, which we'll get to, that's much later in the year. The committee does look; they have access to it in the room. They have the internet; they can log on and look at it.
I wanted to bring up one other team here in the Colonial. I'll catch a couple of teams, but I want to start by bringing up this Northeastern team. Got off to a really rough start, but if you look at what they've done recently here in the month of December, win over Cornell, a home win over Bucknell, a home win over Vermont. We looked at Bucknell and Vermont as two of the top under-the-radar teams heading into this season, and a home win over Harvard to boot there, David. This Northeastern team is very almost quietly, but is starting to make a little noise here.
Yeah, and again, a team that I wasn't big on at all coming into the year. I was really big on the Colonial Conference or coming into the season, and I was sort of disappointed in it after the first couple of weeks. And you start to look at it, it is taking shape. It's just at least different teams than at least what I was expecting, kind of going to the top. But like you said, Northwestern really hot, or Northeastern, I'm sorry, really hot right now.
Yeah, and John, I know you want to discuss Hofstra, who picked up a nice road win last week at Monmouth, also a road win at Rider, and beat Dayton earlier in the season here. Starting to pay a little attention to Hofstra, too, as a team that can make some noise?
Yeah, those were some of the wins that were at least higher in terms of the ratings, but they also won their rivalry game last night as far as the Battle of Long Island goes against Stony Brook, who currently right now is 245, but is probably going to end the season a little bit higher than that, we would hope.
A little bit. I don't know how much higher, really. It's not that great of a Stony Brook team this year. They lost. They haven't really recovered from Steve Pikel moving on, I don't think. Let's go back over here to the standings.
Steve Pikel recovered. How is he doing? That's just
he's doing great. Hey, we almost beat Michigan State, almost.
Yeah.
His upcoming schedule for the week in the Colonial, Charleston with a real interesting road game coming up this weekend at Rhode Island, David.
Yeah. Now, if they win this one, and again, like they need to beat, in my opinion, you can disagree. I think they need to beat a couple teams that are in the top 290 if they want to get the attention of the selection committee. This would certainly fall into that category.
Yeah, John, a couple other games coming up next Wednesday. Towson at Oakland. Oakland's been disappointing, but that's a big road test for Towson if they can pick that up. And Northeastern, we just discussed, at St. Bonaventure.
Well, that's a great game.
If you would have read my mind as far as the Towson game, because Oakland is another team that's been kind of a disappointment, but they are still a pretty tough team to beat at home. But if Northeastern can get this win at the Bonnies, that would definitely build some momentum going into Colonial play.
That's a great game.
So we have to mention it's because of the rivalry here coming up on Sunday, the Delaware State game as well. Not exactly teams that are going to be competing for NCAA tournament bids, but always fun to see that rivalry going forward.
Yeah, that one is interesting. I'm glad that they play that one. Delaware State out of the MEAC. It seems like those two are ever good at the same time, but.
Well, I don't know when last time Delaware State was ever any good, but that's. Yeah. Let's go ahead and turn on some of the other leagues here, and we'll start go back to the very beginning of the America East. We were just talking about Stony Brook, and I don't think we'll talk about them anymore. But John, we're still seeing Albany with the best record overall in this league, and although Vermont I think still has the best metrics.
Well, Vermont has the best metrics because they have a much stronger strength of schedule compared to Albany, who's still checking in at 317 right now.
About Albany, did you watch their game at Memphis? I was fully expecting them to win that one. I just didn't have a lot of faith in Memphis. It's kind of crazy because it's a bye game. They're on the receiving end of the bye game. You typically don't expect a team to win a game like that, but it actually I was really big on Albany, and then losing a bye game is what made me kind of think twice about them. Is that being too harsh on them?
Yeah, I think that this Albany team is a factor of this 317 strength of schedule. Vermont, you look at 118 strength of schedule. So, yeah, 2 more losses, but I will take Vermont's resume at this time. Disappointed by that Vermont loss to Northeastern, although Trey Bell-Haynes was out for that game, so there was a bit of an injury excuse there for the Northeastern loss by Vermont as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming schedule, perhaps. Maybe not. There it is.
Oh, we got some Big Four action. No, we don't.
We got Linden State at New Hampshire, Maine at St. Joe's. It's kind of Albany at Louisville, but I think they're a little over their heads in that game.
Right. I'm guessing Maine is also done playing their in-state foes, whether it's Fort Kent or whoever it was they were playing last week.
Yeah. I don't know. Canisius Albany's semi-interesting, but not a whole lot this week. Northern Kentucky UMBC might be pretty good, just because both teams, UMBC much improved in recent years, and NKU, of course, recently off transition. That one might be kind of fun.
Let's head over to the Atlantic Sun, where Florida Gulf Coast has some of the better numbers on the predictive side. Actually, if you look on the resume side, it's Lipscomb, especially with that big sweep of Belmont and way better RPI than anyone else in the conference.
Yeah.
However, they turned around and lost the game to Tennessee this week.
And again, no shame. I mean, Tennessee is in the rankings, and Lipscomb was right in there. They were right in there with Alabama for a good portion of the game, despite not having at least one starter, and I think maybe being without 2 of their starters. I don't understand. And again, I'm just not smart enough to understand some of the math that goes into these predictive ratings. Florida Gulf Coast is good, and they certainly do have potential, and they had a fantastic first week of the season. But since then, and I'm not just – it's not like we just come onto the show and look at these rankings. We watch these teams. How can anybody say that Lipscomb has not looked like the best team? I just don't get it.
But Gulf Coast did go down to Arlington this past weekend and pick up the win, and that's kind of what I think boosts Gulf Coast back to the top, isn't it?
Well, that one was good, but I don't know. I think – and I know they lost the games, but I think Lipscomb's just looked tough. They got the 2 wins against Belmont. Going to Alabama and playing really tough, and then there's no shame at losing to Tennessee at Tennessee.
Well, that was a win that Gulf Coast desperately needed because while there's no shame in losing 2 to Middle Tennessee, there is a lot of shame at losing at home to Florida Atlantic as well as Bowling Green on the road.
But to your point, Chad, the win at Arlington was good. I was surprised by that one. I really liked this Arlington team.
You look at it here. I mean, they've got a way better win than Lipscomb has under the new groups of sectioning by the NCAA. Even though it's RPI 67 at Arlington, that does count as a Section 1 or a Quadrant 1 win because it's on the road. It's like 1 to 30 at home, 1 to 50 neutral, 1 to 75 on the road is considered a top tier victory. So, and those are what these 4 different sections are you see here on these team sheets. So, but you look at Lipscomb, they won at Belmont, they won at Tennessee State, and everything else has been kind of garbage. I will take the Gulf Coast wins over the Lipscomb wins, despite the sweep of Belmont right now.
I think given that I've actually seen Morehead State, that's almost a moral victory for Morehead against Lipscomb on the road, considering they only lost by 7.
Yeah, Lipscomb was without 2 starters, though. So there is that for that game.
All right, let's take a look at the upcoming week in the A-Sun. John, here are the upcoming games. We got. I don't know that there's anything that really stands out. Gulf Coast back on the road again, this time at Florida International.
If Lipscomb beats Florida, you have to start to like them, right?
That's Florida College.
Yeah, Florida's college basketball team.
Of course, I would hope that Gulf Coast does not lose at FIU because that would be a rather bad double, losing to Florida Atlantic and Florida International.
Yeah, Abilene Christian. Yeah, well, what a craptacular week. Stetson hosting Central Florida. We kind of like this UCF team, and they they struggled against another UTR team earlier in the week. So interesting that they're playing some of that. Florida at Ball State.
one of the better games. North Florida at Ball State. Not that certain. I like this Ball State team a lot better than North Florida.
Right.
They squeaked out a win over FIU tonight, but that's not much.
Yeah.
Big Sky Conference. David, you're really high on this Portland State team, so let me throw this over here to you. They did pick up a road win at Santa Clara this past week.
Yeah, they've looked good, in my opinion, in a lot of games away from home. And, they just have the 2 losses, both of them out in the PK80. One of them was against Duke, a game where they had a lead into the second half. I think that they have looked pretty good. Especially when compared to the rest of the conference. Now, we do have a Front Range game going on right now, Northern Colorado and Denver. That's going on as we're recording this.
That's going on right now. Northern Colorado has had a little bit of life. I guess you have a little bit of life out of Idaho, but I don't know if there's anybody that's shown any life other than Portland State. John, this is the upcoming schedule here for the Big Sky. Not necessarily what we want to, what you really want to circle here. Especially, I don't even think that Portland State playing a non-D1 game this week. So
I don't know if I necessarily want to circle anything, but I just want to highlight how much of an up and down week that Idaho had after pasting Washington State at home in the Battle of the Palouse. They go out to Bakersfield and lose a tough one last Saturday.
Yeah, and I think Portland State tonight, it's not on there, but I believe they're at Oregon, and they might squeeze Oregon a little bit.
Yeah, that game is not on there. That is tonight's game. So by the time most of you are watching this, that will have gone final. And you can either now insert our praise and comments of Portland State for winning that game, or our backtracking on Portland State when they get totally blown out. One of the two. Just kind of insert it right there. Let's go over to the Big South, where David, I guess it's kind of Liberty. It was a very light week the past week with finals going on here, but Liberty picked up the home win over Eastern Shore, and that's about the only game of note that happened this week, I guess, in the Big South.
Yeah, and I like this conference. It's a bus league, a lot of good rivalries, a real exciting regular season in conference play. It's going to be fun when conference play goes on, but until then, it's just kind of blah. As exciting as VMI Longwood was. Why are we circling Longwood?
Because we were circling
Longwood.
That's because we were circling Takua Falls playing probably their 7th or 8th one.
Thank you for buzzing that. That needed to happen.
Let's go. But John, let me seriously go over to you. And anything that you're looking forward to here this week? Don't know that there can be much here, but there's a lot of games.
At the risk of inviting the buzzer again, Takua Falls is returning to Gardner Webb next Wednesday night.
But, Chad, why would you even highlight that?
Tomorrow night. So, but
maybe Takua Falls should be the next year's team of the people.
They might be their next team of the people. To see if they can win a single game next year, we will praise them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Liberty with a non-D1 game for their only game this week, so another kind of a slow week here in the Big South,
and another violation of the commandments.
Yes,
a lot of commandment violations going on in the Big South this week. But John, this was my other thought of a team that we may have been our feature conference this week, and it probably will be coming up in the next few weeks here. But the Big West, looking like a 2 to 3 team battle from what I've seen so far, with some teams that are actually putting up some pretty good wins here.
Yep, it's also including another road win for UC Santa Barbara against a Montana State team that Chad also liked in preseason.
Yeah, and David, I'm starting to get really high on this UC Santa Barbara team. Just the wins.
I am too. Yeah, I like them a lot. I will see if they get into the top 10 at the end of the show. But I actually voted for them. They've been looking really good.
And UC Davis, who has that huge win at Washington State, that they've got a higher RPI right now than Santa Barbara does even.
Oh my God, they do. Yeah, UC Davis win at Washington. That was just to me so surprising. Now Wazoo has started to look like Wazoo again, and I mean that not to indict UC Davis, but when they went up there and won, Wazoo was 6-0, and they had just beaten San Diego State and St. Mary's. So that was a big win for Davis. They kind of ran away from them. They didn't just beat them. That's honestly the only game I've really seen Davis play, but I was impressed.
John, you want to discuss Bethune-Cookman beating Cal Poly?
I want to circle that because I forget if it was Chad or someone else who brought this up in our email thread. This was actually Cal Poly's first ever game played in the state of Florida in their brief D1 history.
Yeah, you go to Florida for the first time ever. What do? You lose to Bethune-Cookman. Not a good showing by Cal Poly there at all.
Yeah.
David, the upcoming games this week, Davis is at San Francisco.
I think they can get that one.
Santa Barbara, USC.
Yeah, that Santa Barbara USC game is going to be a fun one. USC should win, but SC not as good as we had thought. At least they haven't shown it yet. And Santa Barbara really good. Say Santa Barbara gets that win, or are we talking about more than just first place in the Big West? Are we talking fringe bubble if they can get that one?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's quickly go over to the team sheet here and take a look at UCSB's profile right now, and should be coming up on the left-hand side, and there they are. I mean, they've already got 2 quality wins at Montana State and home against San Diego. Only 2 losses at Texas A&M and a really bad loss at Pitt, actually. But
yeah,
the question I guess I have here is this USC game is the last non-conference game of any note that they play. After that, it's just conference play. They have to blow through the Big West to do that.
Yeah, they would have to. I mean, they would have to run away from it, and that's not going to be easy with UC Davis and the like hanging in there. Is Jim Les still at UC Davis? I know I should know that, but I don't.
Yes.
He's done it. He's done very, very well there. I thought he did pretty well at Bradley if you consider taking a school that does not have any conditional admits to the Sweet 16 doing well, and I don't see how any sane person couldn't. Why isn't Jim Les getting more? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but Jim Les at UC Davis, very good coach, and they've been the one game that I saw this year, they looked pretty good. So,
and they got that game at San Fran and the game at Nevada, John, that you'd circled earlier as well coming up.
Yeah, I circled the Nevada game because the Wolfpack has actually dropped a couple games lately against a pair of top 25 teams, so they would do well to defend their home court against a very game Davis team.
We already talked about the Colonials. Let's switch on over to Conference USA. As we record this, Western Kentucky's got about a minute left, down 5 at Wisconsin. Looks like they're probably going to fall in that
down 3
game.
going to the line. Anyway, okay.
Down 3 going to the line. Okay, well, we'll have an update. We'll have a final score before we finish the show on that game for you. But I really want to talk about this Middle Tennessee team. Picked up another win against an SEC opponent, knocking off Ole Miss this past week, David.
Yeah, and for everyone saying that was an upset, you need to stop drinking paint thinner. Middle Tennessee is better than Ole Miss, and they were at home. And is it a little bit shocking that they blew it as wide open as they did down the stretch? Maybe, but I was a little surprised that Ole Miss stayed with them even for a half. Ole Miss is at best decent. Middle Tennessee is legitimately good. And I know I've said it before, but it's worth saying again. We have an over and back, I think, or do we? Anyway, how is it that that Middle Tennessee could lose so many key components to not just last year's team, but to the last 2 years and be this good? How could they reload quite like that? That's just fantastic.
I think it just speaks to the incredible job that Kermit Davis has done there. He's just he really is. I'm amazed he's still there, quite honestly.
Yeah. I am too. La Tech kind of disappointing this week. I mean, where they went to. Anyway, I was kind of expecting them to get the win against Louisiana. And first of all, it was a sparse crowd, considering how good both the teams were. And secondly, just a real uninspired performance. Now, they fell down big, and they did play their way back into it and have a chance to win. But kind of a rivalry game that they did not show up ready to play in.
Yeah. John, we also saw Auburn sneak by UAB. So UAB was in the game. We thought this UAB team would be a little better than they've been so far, but they were at least competitive in that Auburn game. But I got to say, how about UTEP minus Tim Floyd, now 3-0?
You know what? I like
UTEP. The win over Washington State.
We should have made them had we known Tim Miles was going to leave, we may have made them the team of the people.
Tim Floyd.
Yeah, or Tim Floyd. I said Tim
Oh,
Floyd.
the puppet's head would explode if Tim Miles was coaching at UTEP. That does not say very much for Wazoo the past couple weeks after.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Looking ahead in Conference USA, besides this Western Kentucky-Wisconsin game tonight, Middle Tennessee, another SEC opponent coming up on Saturday with Auburn. Louisiana Tech is on the road at Texas. So we got a lot of interesting games in this next week involving CUSA teams.
Yep, especially Tuesday when Marshall visits the Xavier Pirates, if you follow the movie We Are Marshall.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess there was some sort of copyright thing there. This Middle Tennessee versus Auburn game in Birmingham is real interesting. We talked about that on the Hoops HD report. That's one that I think Middle can get. And when it happens, everyone will be calling it an upset. Auburn is good. We've been expecting them to be good for a while, but this is kind of the week against this is kind of the week that might shape how the rest of the season goes for Conference USA. We always talk about it being a one-bid league. Well, it's not a one-bid league if Middle goes out there and beats Auburn and La Tech goes to Texas and somehow wins. And if they're able to pick up some of these opportunities, suddenly it's not a one-bid league anymore.
Yeah,
I don't expect Marshall to win at Xavier, but I don't know. But those are two teams that can win both of those.
I want to go back to there's one final other score from this week that we did not go over. We talked about this Western Kentucky team. They did have that loss to Ohio on the road this past week too. That was a little disappointing of a loss for this WKU team, who certainly can make up for it if they find a way to play this game tonight.
Right, and kind of a head-scratching loss there too. Anyway.
But let's move ahead to the Horizon League now. We will keep you updated on that WKU game because, of course, you are all watching this live.
Right, yes.
John, over the Horizon, Oakland continued to disappoint. Northern Kentucky, okay, but we're not looking at anything that's even a sniff an at-large bit, are we?
You're not going to talk about Butler winning their opener against Young. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Yep, we have to go back about 5 years for that to be their Horizon opener.
Yeah, there's not much here, David. I don't know.
I really liked two of these teams coming into the year, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Northern Kentucky and Oakland have not been bad, but they haven't been nearly as good as either one of us were expecting them to be. I don't think, or any of us. So, yeah, I mean, this conference is getting won, and it's not going to matter what happens during the season since home court is not determined by that anymore. And it'll come down to the last week in Detroit, unless Oakland or NKU does something crazy like win out the rest of the way. But
well, Saturday Oakland has a big shot playing Michigan State in a doubleheader there in Detroit, along with Detroit and Michigan is the second game of that doubleheader. I don't think they're quite going to be up to that task, though.
No, they've played Michigan State fairly regularly, and they played them tough a couple times, so we'll see.
But if you want to talk about taking a swing over your head,
yeah,
Northern Kentucky will be taking their act on the road to A&M on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our teams that we're looking at have really come up with some big, huge tests. Obviously, if either one of them picks up those wins, we can start talking about this league getting a little more, I think.
Right, yeah.
Let's move right on along over to the Ivy League conference that, we've seen some very disappointing in Princeton and Harvard this year, but Penn, continued to real nice and became the first Ivy League team ever to win at Dayton this week.
I don't know how regularly Ivy League teams play at Dayton, but a real nice win for Penn. And I don't say this condescendingly. Coming into the year, we were kind of not even expecting them to make the Ivy League tournament. Here they are, not only, I mean, heads and tails looking better than everybody else. They're the only team with a winning record, and they've done it not against a gauntlet schedule, but against a respectable schedule. I mean, the win at Dayton, they've won some other big games. One of their 4 losses was to Nova. You can't really fault them for that.
Now, John, the upcoming week in the Ivy League, another conference with a fairly late week, obviously with finals going on. Princeton at USC, Dartmouth at Notre Dame, right?
Yeah, hard to imagine people from the Ivy League wanting to take finals week seriously. But Princeton will also have quite the road trip out west with the games against Cal Poly and USC, but I would not expect them to win either one.
I could see them winning the Cal Poly game. I think that's definitely a winnable game for Princeton. And I think Princeton's out there may even be staying out there because I think they're heading out to the Diamond Head next weekend. I don't know if they're planning on spending the whole week after finals right out there on the West Coast or if they're coming back or not.
Yeah, they got a big
not that certain.
They can do that. Yeah.
Well, actually, if Tuesday, I think the Diamond Head starts on Friday, so I think Tuesday, if they're out there Tuesday in USC, they probably are staying out there.
Yep.
Metro Atlantic, David, where we see a bunch of 500 teams and worse.
Yeah, real down year. Monmouth, again, kind of rebuilding. Not bad by rebuilding year standards, but certainly not going to be in any sort of NCAA or NIT discussion without finishing first or winning the automatic bid. Tim Cluse and company looking, again, like one of the better teams in the league. Now, it's a weak league this year, but as much fun as we like to have with Coach Cluse, he's done a fantastic job with this Iona team, and especially in recent years.
Yeah, John, here's our upcoming schedule. I don't know if there's anything really worth pointing out, and probably won't be until we get to conference play. Is there?
Well, I'm going to highlight Iona and St. John's just because that is a nice matchup within teams from the greater New York area, and one that Cluse and his team certainly could pull off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, let's keep going right along here to the Mid-American, where we already discussed the fact that Ohio had that big win this past week over Western Kentucky. We also have a team here, David, 8-1, Central Michigan, the Chippewas.
Yeah, 8-1, 6-1 against real teams, and maybe 2-1 or 3-1 against teams that are real, even by real team standards. So they're not the team. They got off to a little bit of a start, and their record doesn't jump out at you. But if you were to pull up Ball State, I think they've won 4 or 5 in a row, and they have been some pretty novel wins. You got the Valpo win that you mentioned. Those games have been real exciting. I don't know how much longer that series has on it, but over the last 3 or 4 years, that one's been fun. Going to Notre Dame and winning. How about the Cardinals? Wow. I mean, to me, they're the story of the conference, even though they're only 6-4.
Only 6-4. The losses at Oklahoma, at Dayton, at Bucknell, at Oregon, all road losses, all against respectable teams. It would have been nice to see them pick up maybe the Bucknell game or maybe the Dayton game, but
right,
But they've got only home games left in terms of non-conference play before we get into the conference season. That they should pick up all of them: North Florida, Jackson State, and FAMU.
Yep, all bye games preceding the MAC conference.
Yeah, I didn't know the MAC played in those kinds of bye games. I thought they only played in the other kind. Anyway.
John, the upcoming schedule here in the MAC, we've got I'm not that certain what we got. Is there a game that really stands out to you?
Well, there is an old rivalry as it pertains to Ohio and Marshall because they used to be conference foes in the MAC on at least a couple of occasions. And Buffalo and Syracuse, will the Bulls be able to catch the Qs napping at home?
I think this Buffalo team is a fairly decent team this year. I would not be completely shocked if the upset happened. I mean, it would be a huge upset, but I don't think I'd be, say stop the presses here. Wouldn't shock me all the way, David.
No, it wouldn't me either, but it would surprise me. Not to the degree like Buffalo's shown signs of being able to play well, but Syracuse at home, that's kind of a tall order there. But it would be fun to see them win it. There's no doubt who I'll be rooting for in that game.
Well, I know you're a huge Jim Boeheim fan. We've owned
huge.
Dave, let me stick with you here. Pull up one of our favorite conferences, the MEAC.
A&T, North Carolina A&T.
North Carolina A&T is still best record in the conference, tied for the most D1 wins, despite being a centenary finalist last year. It's been a huge turnaround there for A&T.
Really has. And again, like in the centenary discussion all the way to the very end. Now, I know it's a weak league. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like 5 teams without a Div 1 win and then another 2 or 3 with only one. But A&T, again, 3 and 4, they didn't win 3 games all last year, I don't think. So
I do not believe that they did.
at least if they were, they weren't Div 1 wins.
Right. 2 of our teams without a win at all yet, Norfolk State and Coppin State, down at the bottom of the conference too.
Yeah.
Take a look at the upcoming schedule here. You actually got a lot of games. A lot of these teams out making some money this week. But
yeah.
I think
getting paid them in this one.
Other than that Delaware State game we previously mentioned, I don't know if there's anything really worth circling here.
No. There's the
Family Southern. Taking on this one.
I think Chad's afraid of where I'm going to go because the hot road show comes.
Buzz! Get the buzzer out. Yeah. Thank you.
One more from you, Sleek, and we're just throwing off the podcast. Let's go to the Missouri Valley. I'm a little afraid to go to Sleeka, but I will. Loyola Chicago still continue to rack up those wins, 9-1 against D1, 10-1 overall. Only that very bad loss to Boise State by blowout against them at this point.
Yeah, I think the other thing we have to highlight would be that Northern Iowa win against Arlington, who themselves has lost 2 in a row, and they also had a non-D1 win against cross-state rival Dubuque.
Yeah, 2 really good teams, or at least with really good profiles right here in Northern Iowa and Loyola Chicago. And when I say good, I mean, winning at Florida. The wins that UNI has against NC State and was it Purdue or Tennessee that they beat down there? And then their only losses coming to North Carolina and Villanova. And they've been a lot more competitive with Villanova than virtually anyone else that's played Villanova. So I think you're looking at I think the first place team is in regardless of what they do in the tournament by the time it's over. Yeah. Especially when you look at how many teams have those bloated records right now.
A couple of teams we do have to mention here. First of all, Valpo picked up their first 2 losses of the season, not only losing to Purdue, but following that up with the loss to Ball State by 1 point that we mentioned earlier. Missouri State, who we were very high on, suffered a humiliating loss, David, on the road at Oral Roberts. This is a bad Oral Roberts team that has losses to non-D1 teams on their resume. And what the hell happened in that game?
Yeah, there's games where you stub your toes. There's games where you shoot your foot off. This was the latter. Holy crap, what a horrible loss. We'll have an update of what's happening in Wisconsin after – oh, Lord. The baseline trick. We keep reverting back to CUSA. Western Kentucky hit a shot to tie the game. Whiskey ran the baseline trick at him, and it worked.
Yeah, and now
where they drew a foul. Oh,
line with a shot to win the game. We've seen this trick before. We saw it last year during championship week.
Yeah.
Remember, but David, I think before we switch to another conference here, as I pull up the next week's schedule, in fact, Evansville, I think you're a little bit high on them as well.
Yeah, being there at 8-2, and they had a win at Arlington. Was it Arlington? They had beaten somebody that I really liked. I want to say it was Arlington.
I'll pull up the Evansville profile here. Right now, their wins include Fresno and at Bowling Green.
Yeah, I want to say. I'm sorry, it was Fresno. Who, again, Fresno State 7-2. One of the teams that I kind of liked, I've liked what I've seen out of them, and when I saw that Evansville, I mean, when you saw them beat Fresno, I'm like, maybe they can make some noise. So,
the upcoming schedule, John, Valpo at Northwestern on Thursday night. Loyola has a road test at Milwaukee. Anything else that you're really looking forward to here? David's Evansville's team is at Duke next week.
Well, I think you also have to highlight Evansville playing back-to-back games against Austin Peay and Chicago Midway. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, well, I guess that was the airport.
Okay, they're going up against the airport. Congratulations there to Evansville. Yeah, David, anything else come up this week that you're really looking forward to in this league?
No, like not so much the game
This-
itself, but it's just can Loyola hang on? Valpo going to Northwestern is going to be kind of fun.
And we got that game is not at Iowa State. That's a neutral court game in Des Moines.
Okay,
but,
yeah, that's the
it's
Northern Iowa State game.
The Big Four doubleheader there: Northern Iowa, Iowa State, followed by Drake, Iowa.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a big thing coming up on Saturday as well. But let's jump ahead to whatever conference comes up next, and I think it's the Northeast. John, how about those Seahawks at 7-1?
Yep, they just continue to keep chugging along, and that includes a non-D win against Mercy to propel them to 7-1. But again, non-D1 doesn't really matter, so we're just going to skip past it.
Well, I don't know, David. Here, the only loss so far was at Missouri, the number 4 RPI team in the nation.
Yeah. I mean, if they finish the season with only one loss, I think we'll have to take them seriously. But I don't know. They've clearly, at least in terms of wins, they're clearly showing us more than anybody else in the league is. But still, with so many teams playing in bye games, you really can't get a feel for this league really until they start playing in conference play.
Well, we'll know their next 3 games if they really are legitimate: at Rider, at Seton Hall, at Dayton. That would definitely show us that this Wagner team is a lot more than just a team that has just piled up wins against garbage competition. But John, let me go ahead for you here and throw up next week's schedule as well. Let me know if there's anything coming up this week in Northeast that you are looking forward to.
State University of New York Maritime at St. Francis, Brooklyn.
Yes, the great.
I'm
Maritime
not looking.
Academy.
I'm on record as not looking forward to that one.
We know our colleague Lee Del Vecchio will be tuned in intently to the Central Connecticut at Boston College game, though. And
He will be. He will be. He will watch it tip to buzzer.
Over in the Ohio Valley Conference, we had that good start by Belmont, then they fell apart. Murray State looks good in one moment, then they go and they lay an egg against St. Louis.
There was about a 10-minute stretch in that St. Louis game in the second half where you just wondered if Murray State was even Division I. Good grief.
Yeah. Jacksonville State gave Oregon State a real close game last night, but did end up falling by a point at the end there as well.
Quite a final 10 seconds to that game where Jacksonville State had 3 shots blocked. Anyway.
But the upcoming schedule here in the OVC, we've got the following games. If they come up on the screen, maybe they won't. Here's the schedule. John, is there anything that you're really highlighting here this next week, or are we just going to kind of wait for conference play at this point?
I think we'll be waiting for conference play, but we also have to look at Auburn making a visit at Murray State next Tuesday night, which is actually going to be a good chance for the Racers to possibly play their way into at least some at-large discussion, but that's a game they absolutely must win at home.
Yeah, that's a showcase game. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, interesting game and interesting night that night with also Belmont at Western Kentucky, which should be a fun one as well. WKU did lose that game tonight by 1 point at Wisconsin, so they're going to be desperate for a win there as well. Moving on, right on over to the Patriot League, and I don't even know what to say about this conference anymore. Where we thought that how good Bucknell was going to be, and they're just they're just garbage this year, David. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, they really are. And who knows what they'll do once they get in the league play. But the service academies, at least with their overall record, I know neither one of them have played anyone that's really exceptionally good, but looking just as good as anybody else right now.
Well, yeah, they picked up a pair of road wins this past week. Navy at Columbia, Army at SFBK. And while not great teams that they went up against, a road win is a road win.
Right, it is.
And John, the upcoming week here, a very late week here, the big Army Air Force game coming up on Sunday.
Yep, part 1 of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy, otherwise for the basketball equivalent.
Mm-hmm. Moving along to the Southern Conference, another conference, David, I don't know that anybody has really stood out so far this year.
Not to me so much. Samford, but not in the kind of way you want to stand out. I was kind of expecting them to be more like 8-2 or 7-3 than 2-8. One of the biggest disappointments, not just in the SoCon, but really in all of under the radar or maybe all of college basketball. Now they still have time left, but this is kind of, and I know that they've played some heavyweights, but for them to go out and get beat the way they're getting beaten after they had looked so strong for most of the season last year, I know they finished 7th, but they were right in a lot of those games against the teams at the top of the league, and they actually looked really good in the final part of the season. What the hell is wrong with Samford?
Yeah, real disappointing. I thought that team were right there at the top. Although I think we're going to have an interesting race in the Southern as we get into the season, because Furman, I think, will be there. Greensboro, East Tennessee State, Mercer, Wofford. I think any of those top 5 teams may be there. And if Samford can bounce back, John's got some letters on the screen there. Yes, the Western Carolina Southern Wesleyan game was postponed. It was not a 0-0 tie. Thank you.
Okay. But East Tennessee State has kind of got my attention a little bit. I mean, they clobbered Northern Kentucky in the game last week.
John, East Tennessee State's at Xavier that's coming up this weekend.
Yep, that's going to be after exam weeks for both teams, and I would not expect East Tennessee to be pulling off the upset against Xavier. Not this time around.
No.
Next Wednesday, Wofford at North Carolina. Wofford had the big win over Georgia Tech earlier, but no, I don't really think that they're going to be in that Carolina.
Grambling also had a big win over Georgia Tech. We'll get to that in a minute.
David, a conference with 2 teams with only 1 loss here. We got Stephen F. Austin, who has played 3 out of 4 their 4 non-D1 games, and Lamar, who has played all 4 of their non-D1 games already.
Yeah, both nearing show cause for infractions.
Oh, beyond show cause.
Yes. SFA for real though. I at least by Southland standards, we saw them absolutely dominate. I think they only lost 1 league game of any kind, be it in a tournament or in the regular season, over a 3-year stretch. Lamar had a good start to the season, or so we thought. Was it Wake Forest they beat? I want to say it was real early on out of the – anyway, and thanks for the help, Chad.
Let's go ahead and pull up some of the schedules. Here's Stephen F. Austin, first of all, on the left-hand side. Their only loss at Mississippi State, had that real nice win at Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, that one shocked me. That's the one that got my attention. That's why I'm big on them.
And if we look over here at Lamar and we ignore all of those Jarvis Christians and Howard Payne games and the like, 3 true road wins at Tulsa, at Coastal, and at UTEP, and only the home loss to Bakersfield so far.
Yeah. So, again, I like this SFA team. It wouldn't surprise me if they blew through the league again.
Upcoming schedule here for the next week. I think Sam Houston State was playing somebody tonight, in fact. But a lot of games this week. More teams out there making some money, John, right?
Yep. Although one game I will actually be going on the road on Sunday. I will be making the short trip to Moorhead to see Central Arkansas, who has been kind of an intriguing team themselves.
Yeah, they've been real schizophrenic. They've struggled in some games, but in others, played real tough out at Pauley Pavilion against UCLA. Absolutely blasted Cal, I think it was. But yet they have some head-scratching losses on there too. So,
yeah, actually, this may be the week, Dave, that we actually find out a lot about SFA. Saturday at LSU, Tuesday at Missouri.
Yeah. And if they get one of those, I mean, you can't really just think that this is a 15, 16 seeded team anymore. I mean, they're for real if they get one of those.
Let's move on over to, I think we're up to the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and we may just move right on past this about 3 seconds after we bring it up. Last week we spoke a lot about it with Grambling's huge win at Georgia Tech. This week there has been nothing else of note. I don't even know that any of these teams picked up a D1 win this past week. And
Texas Southern at 0-9, better RPI than Georgetown, who's undefeated. I love that stat. And we need to bring this up again because it was so incredible. Grambling won at Georgia Tech. We're going to be talking about that into February.
We do have a conference here. There are only 7 teams that are without a win in D1. 5 of them are in this league, and that tells you just about all you need to know about the SWAC this season. The upcoming week in the SWAC should be showing up on the board right about now. Grambling, a winnable game at Southeastern Louisiana, maybe?
No.
No? All
I
right.
don't think so.
Texas
Maybe,
Southern,
I don't know. Like, Sela's not half bad, though.
Texas Southern has games at Baylor and at TCU as they continue to bolster that strength of schedule, trying to get higher than number 4. It's not high enough for them, I don't think.
Right,
But,
yeah. Has anyone ever lost every single out-of-conference game and then won every single conference game? I don't know if that's happened, but I'm hoping that happens because based on what I've seen, Texas Southern, despite not having any wins, is still better than anybody else in this league.
They're better, but it seems like every year they'll lose about 2 or 3 games in the SWAC anyway.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, coming up Sunday, Houston is hosting Prairie View. Houston better watch out. Prairie View is used to playing on that home court that Houston is playing on in conference play. So they may have they probably played more games there than Houston has.
Oh, they probably have. I'm sure they have.
Houston playing their home schedule at Texas Southern's court this year. John, let's go right on over to the Summit League. And is there anything that's really stood out to you? I think we've seen a couple of the teams that we really like take some minor steps back a little bit over the past week, maybe.
Well, we did see a future Summit League matchup as far as the Fighting Nodax and South Dakota State with the Jackrabbits coming out on top this year.
Yeah, and we also saw the North Dakota State rivalry. That one's pretty heated. Even in basketball, that was a rocking game.
Yeah, also saw that Oral Roberts win over Missouri State we mentioned earlier. But upcoming schedule here in the Summit League, David. Interesting, couple clinches of games coming up on Friday. South Dakota State at Colorado and Denver at Stanford.
That's going to be a good one. Colorado better watch out. Denver out at Stanford. That's not. I don't know. That South Dakota State Colorado game's probably the most. That's the only one that's really jumping out at me. South Dakota going out to UCLA, but
we also get a return game on Monday night with Fort Wayne going back to Indiana.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about that? I mean, that was the upset of the year last when it happened. Indiana
when
going
it happened.
Fort Wayne losing. Can Fort Wayne make it back-to-back years over the Hoosiers?
Maybe, although I don't think it will have quite the shock value that last year's game had.
No, well, it might, being that it would be at Assembly Hall. But John, over the Sun Belt Conference, there's a team that we haven't really discussed much so far this year that I think is definitely worth discussing again, and that's this Georgia Southern team. Picked up a road win, dominating at George Mason just the other night.
No, I remember Georgia Southern because, as I mentioned earlier, they were also part of the Gulf Coast Showcase where they actually lost to Towson. But Tookie Brown, one of their star players, has also helped them along with a pair of wins against Savannah State and also a nice one at George Mason.
Yeah, and Arlington with a rough week. I mean, 2 quality opponents, but going 0-2 in those games, albeit a pair of close ones, David.
Yeah, I still like this Arlington team. I think they needed to get at least one of those to remain legit, but I think once they get in the conference play, they're going to be pretty good. How about the Ragin' Cajun? I know we talked about them earlier when we discussed CUSA, but a real nice win on the road against rival La Tech.
Yeah, real
in
nice.
In front of a half-empty arena for some reason. Apparently there was a concert on campus that same night, but not a very full arena.
They've got priorities down there, I guess. Here's their upcoming schedule in the Sun Belt. Georgia Southern out in the West Coast to take on Bakersfield. A few other games there of note. Anything that really stands out at you, John?
Well, Ozarks at Little Rock.
Actually, we got a couple of games called Monday. Got to start this Monday night game of Arlington and Creighton, though.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think Arlington can be competitive. I'm not expecting them to go to Creighton and win. I mean, Creighton is a snake pit, especially this time of year. And how about those hot Appy State team going to Ohio State? What is that for?
let's move right on over to the.
You said you would kick the next person out, Chad, that did that.
I said I would kick you out, Stalika. So, but last but not least, the Western Athletic Conference, where we saw New Mexico State, a nice road win at rival New Mexico. Grand Canyon took care of Grambling. And I think, David, do you have a score update on Grand Canyon's game tonight with
It's very close. Grand Canyon's led most of the way. I think Boise State drew even now. The problem is there's a violation going on right now because the score is not on the screen, and I've been watching that in Houston LSU back and forth. But Grand Canyon, so far, looking really good in this game. I didn't think they had it in them. I thought Boise would run away from them. It's a 2-point game with about 10 minutes to go. Live here on Tape Delay.
Live on Tape Delay. So look up that score and then insert whatever comments you think we would have made about it. John,
Right.
the upcoming schedule in the WAC, New Mexico State taking on Illinois this weekend.
I think we also have to highlight our team of the people because they are not listed because they actually won their first game in Pac West play.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
Calm down. I'm getting there.
Yeah. How about okay, we're not done. We would be remiss if we wouldn't mention the most absurd halftime score I've ever seen in my life. Chicago State went to Northwestern and fell behind 55-8 at the half. Anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah. Cal at Seattle, though, another game, winnable game for our WAC team here, hosting Cal this week on Tuesday. Cal team that is coming off that San Diego State win.
Yeah, I can't figure Cal out, but that's not this discussion. I don't know. Seattle, I'm a little surprised they just haven't gotten it going to the point to where they're not a little bit better than what they are, not just this season, but as a program. A team you like, since losing their first two at Kentucky and at Duke, Utah Valley 6-2 since then.
Yeah, interesting game this week. They're going to head out to Hawaii also.
Yeah, so that one should be fun. Mark Pope's team.
John, I know you were begging for it, but here it is, Cal Baptist. Let's take a look at them. Big 6-point home win over Point Loma this week.
Yep, and that's coming off a tough week where they failed to get a win in their annual road trip to Hawaii.
Right, because one team flooded the arena. Just blatant, and then it just broke their concentration. And when they went to Chaminade, they just weren't ready.
I did not get their upcoming schedule on the screen there, and I apologize that I did not get it up there. But they're coming up Saturday night. They're going to be hosting Dixie State, and Monday night they are going to be on the road at Biola, Biola. Biola.
Yeah.
And
Biola better watch out. The team of the people, your champions. And this is your team. This is everybody's team.
Wasn't Frank Biola one of the pitchers for the New York Mets way back, John?
Is that who they're playing?
Also for the Minnesota Twins.
Minnesota Twins.
But if you're looking for a little geography lesson in the Pac West, Dixie State is the only team outside of the state of California, but they're actually located in Utah.
And that would be wrong, John. Completely wrong.
The
Hawaii schools.
Hawaii, Hilo, and Chaminade are in the Pac West, and they do not play the state of California either. Now,
they play there several times a year
because of that Chaminade upset loss to them, win over Cal Baptist earlier this year. But let's go ahead and turn to how about the top 10 list?
Yeah, let's see. I'm anxious to see who got in this week.
All right, well, we're going to go over our top 10 list, so we always got to start with a drum roll, possibly. And thank you. And our number one team is Northern Iowa Panthers.
Yeah, and they should be.
David, I did not agree with this. I think both of you
really
did. I have another team that I like better than Northern Iowa, even at this point. A team that I believe belongs to the top 25 right now from what they have done. And I'm not taking anything away from Northern Iowa, but it's the team that came in at number 2, and that's Middle Tennessee.
You really and we had talked about that earlier. I think Middle Tennessee will be in the rankings before the year's over, even if it's just by default. But they have a much smoother road to a bloated record than Northern Iowa does. But I don't know. This is a pretty good Northern Iowa team. Ben Jacobson, again, doing a really nice job with them.
Coming in number 3, Loyola Chicago, the other team from the Missouri Valley Conference, and we're really looking at, we mentioned this earlier, that there's a shot of 2 bids out of this MVC no matter who wins and who finishes second, unless some crazy upsets start happening.
Right.
John, coming in number 4 was the Towson team.
All right, way up there. Yeah.
And now you're starting to see why Chad had featured the Colonial earlier tonight.
Yeah, in case you haven't figured it out, like I don't know what the rankings look like until I see them on here. Only Chad knows. So
I really don't remember by the time we get to the show. Number 5, West Kentucky. This was voted on before the loss tonight, although I don't think I would knock them down for losing by 1 point at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. The way they lost, oh my God, maybe you should knock them down for that. But no, all in all, a pretty good effort up there.
Yeah, coming in at number 6 was Texas Arlington. I did not personally have Arlington in my top 10 at all. You two put them up there. I thought that with back-to-back losses this week, even if they were against quality opponents, I just couldn't keep them in my top 10.
Okay.
Coming in at number 7 is
Georgia Southern.
John, you and I think we're pretty high on this team after, as they move into the top of the Sun Belt standings. I think they definitely belong on top of Arlington, though.
Yep, and I think I had them just a little bit below Towson because of the head-to-head matchup.
I think it's their debut in our top 10, but the UC Santa Barbara Gauchos kicking in there at number 8, David.
Yep, and again, we talked about them when we discussed the Big West. Like them and UC Davis, but yeah, a real good showing, especially for a team that's been kind of down in recent years, looking really good this year.
At number 9, Evansville, David, you really helped push them up there. I know you're pretty high on them. And at number 10, just in it, Vermont still hanging in there. I did not have Vermont in. I think that they've got to start winning a few more games, although I think they are good enough on paper, good enough of a player team that they may find the way in the top 5 by the end of the year.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
A few honorable mentions: Stephen F. Austin, College of Charleston, Portland State, Central Michigan, Louisiana, and Ball State. David, any other thoughts on the top 10 list?
No, I pretty much agree with it. I didn't have Georgia Southern in mind. I actually think I had Louisiana ahead of them, but certainly not undeserved. I mean, I certainly think they're deserving of it. I don't have that much of an issue with it. But again, I do think, and we're starting to see a couple teams, particularly out of the Valley, like you said, that are pushing to land inside the bubble, and maybe another in Middle Tennessee, who should have been inside the bubble last year but wasn't.
Well, it didn't matter because they got the auto bid. But
yeah, but they got the auto bid.
But I guess on that note, John, let me start with you. Any other final thoughts for this evening?
I think we forgot to cover this in Under the Radar last week, but it was the 21st year in a row that Taylor University has hosted their annual Silent Night tradition, where their student section and crowd will remain silent until they score their 10th point in the game, in which everyone will start cheering. They'll rush the floor. We've had all sorts.
It's fantastic. It is.
And I think we've had a marriage proposal in the past as well.
Mm-hmm. Some of the costumes, I mean, they go all out for it. It's pretty cool.
David, any other thoughts from you?
Not from me, no. Just, again, it's kind of been a sparse week with finals exams coming up. But as you said, the action is really going to start to pick back up this weekend. And it's kind of a big week for Conference USA. We talked about it earlier, but I'll mention that again.
Even as the weather turns cold, right?
Oh, my God.
I'll tell you what.
It's time to end the show.
It is time to end the show, but I think we've got to end it once again on my favorite under-the-radar moment of the entire season so far, because it's just really is worth it. So here it is coming up right now on the screen.
What? Oh, yes.
UNC Greensboro Presbyterian J.C. Younger takes the inbound pass and throws up the jumper, and it goes in. Huge win for Presbyterian. If you thought it looked good, it sounded even better. Hey, Ryan Clary, tell me what happened.
And Melton comes to JC. He'll put it up. Got it! He got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! PC wins! PC wins! PC wins! The shot is going to count! The shot is going to count!
Because the crew is great.
Because the crew is great. And as you pointed out, that followed 2 hours of melancholy deadpan announcing.
It's still my favorite finish of the entire year, and may be for the top of the entire season. So I just had to throw that out there one last time. But I guess on behalf of David Griggs and John Salika, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be talking to you again real soon.